Some people might have a little rock and roll pneumonia.
You wanted the best, you got the best from my home studio on Long Island, New York. Welcome to Ian Scotto Rocks. I am your host, Ian Scotto, and today we're going to be talking about a band that is an absolute favorite of mine, Deadstar Assembly. This is a band that I often listen to when I'm at the gym, lifting, going for a run. I mean, it is a high-intensity music. They're just great. I feel they never got the proper respect that they deserved. I don't know if they're ever going to come back and do anything, but that's what we're getting into for this video. You often hear me reference Eddie Trunk a lot here on Ian Scotto Rocks, and I don't always agree with Eddie. Sometimes I'm critical of things that he says, but he's probably one of the biggest inspirations for what I do without a doubt. And if you do listen to Eddie Trunk regularly, he does a show pretty often about bands that should have been huge. And people call in and say bands that they think should have been huge. And I will be straight up with you. I'm kind of lifting that from him. And I'm doing this video in my own form about a band that should have been huge. And that is absolutely Deadstar Assembly. So let's get right into it. In 2001, a band emerged out of South Florida with an industrial sound, 80s-inspired keyboards, crunchy guitar tones, and incredibly catchy choruses. That band was Deadstar Assembly. And the thing about them that I think stands out from the first time you come across them is that they had an aura from the get-go that they were just a way bigger band than they actually were. What I mean by that was that they crafted an image, put way more into their live show, and formed identities that made it very clear that these were not just some guys making music on the side of whatever they were also pursuing outside of the band at that time. Everyone had an alias, and the original members consisted of Dearborn on vocals, Jay on guitars, the Dro on bass, Mubo on keys, and Cygnus on drums. Very quickly, Jay would be replaced by Dregs, and after only a few shows, they'd head to the studio to record their debut self-titled album. Their self-titled album featured standout tracks like Comes to Tongue and the ballad Breathe For Me, but the song that really landed them on the map was their cover of the New Order classic, Send Me an Angel. This is a song that was covered many times prior, and has been covered many times since by all different bands across the spectrum of genres. The best known of these is probably Thrice's cover. I personally think DSA's take on this is the best, and I know that the original artists behind Send Me an Angel actually gave their stamp of approval to DSA. That song was my introduction to the band, and so many others' introduction to the band. And Send Me an Angel is absolutely what got me into them. So if you look back at the music video, which we'll show some of, I think people will say the image was very of the time. It does look a little dated. Back then, though, you'd be like, this is a super high budget video of them in space. And today, you may be like, this looks kind of corny. But that was cool at the time, okay? Because Linkin Park did a very similar video visually with In the End. And actually, if Basilius could, my video editor could do maybe a little split screen of In the End next to Send Me an Angel, and you'll see. Very similar. So they weren't doing something that was outside the realm of what people were into at the time. That was what was cool. And yeah, we look back at it in retrospect 20 plus years later, and yeah, it looks a little out there, but yeah, I think it worked at the time. I'm going to get into some additional theories later as to why I think DSA never became as big as they should have. But one of the reasons is that their debut got kind of a head start with how big Send Me an Angel was, at least on an underground level. Like, it wasn't a full-fledged major success by any means. It didn't chart, as far as I know, but the song just got around. If you guys remember sites like Vampire Freaks, it was huge with that crowd, and it was the height of all that stuff. It's the closest thing to a hit DSA ever had. Also, DSA were truthfully more hometown heroes than anything else. If you look at this time, they played a ton of shows in South Florida, but outside of that, just a few gigs here and there. I think they probably could have capitalized some more on that song getting on a tour with some bigger bands maybe, Also, even though the band got some exposure in years that followed in a few video games, movies, and shows on MTV with their music being used, I think the 4-year wait for the follow-up album, Unsaved, killed a lot of that momentum that they had going at that point. Additionally, from 2002 to 2006, the music scene in general just changed significantly. This kind of sucks because Unsaved showed a ton of progression musically. Most of their live set for the years to follow would feature songs from that album. I added a ton of songs I still listen to all the time, like Killing Myself Again, Dejected, Naive, and Insurrection. And it should have been a bigger album than the debut, but it just wasn't. In touring for this album, they'd play with some notable bands that are still doing it today, such as the Birthday Massacre, another band that I think should be way bigger. And side note, they actually just put out a great album called Pathways that you should all check out. But pretty short after this album, Mubo would leave the band and be replaced by Scuzz. Mubo would come back after only a couple of years, but then Cygnus would leave and get replaced by a guy I got to know who's an absolutely killer drummer, Chris DK. Chris has definitely had the most notable career of any of the band members since playing in bands like the Genitorturers and Pretty Boy Floyd. It was another long 4-year wait, though, for another album, and this was when I got really heavily into the band. They'd put out Coat of Arms, which is my personal favorite album from their catalog. For one, Chris is a phenomenal drummer once again. The vocals were a huge improvement from Dearborn. And I think the biggest change, though, is that there were all types of shredding all over the album with these really sick fills on a bunch of songs. I saw them live at that time in Brooklyn, and once again, the thing to note with these guys was how much pride they put into their live show. You'd have these lasers that were coming out of the Droz bass. Well, maybe we could show some of that on screen. It was very Motley Crue-esque. And it was very apparent to me that they put a lot of money into the band presenting itself as being this major act over just a local South Florida act that didn't really have much exposure at the time. They did play some festivals overseas, though, that did really well. As for my favorite songs on Coat of Arms, I like it all, really. Some standout tracks, though, are Blood Bags, In Secrecy, and then they also did an updated version of the ballad Breathe For Me from the first album, maybe hoping it could get some new exposure, but I can't really say it did. Once again, it was another long wait for a follow-up album, 2015's Blame It on the Devil, which stands out for some harsher vocals, and it had some really great catchy songs. The title track, Baptized by Fire, and Will Not Die. It's not really much of a departure from the previous album, I'd say. If you like Coat of Arms, it's very similar musically. The thing is, they basically put this album out, and then that was it. A couple of shows, no touring, no announcement that they were going on a hiatus or anything like that. They just kind of did. The most active member outside of the band would once again still be Chris DK. I have to give some love to the Dro, though, because he really archived everything the band ever did on video, and all of that is available on YouTube thanks to him. Like, everything that you're seeing on screen from this video is mainly thanks to the Dro. So major kudos to the Dro. You can find a ton of that footage on his YouTube. He actually has his own channel as well that has over 500,000 subscribers, mainly of drones. It's got some skydiving stuff. He's definitely very into filming all different kinds of stuff in nature, and he's made a name for himself with that. They'd reunite for one show in Tampa in 2021, celebrating 20 years of the band. Alongside DSA would be another beloved Florida band popular around that time, Crossbreed. That's been it, though. Nothing else. So I want to expand a little bit on why Deadstar Assembly never got bigger in addition to what we already laid out here. But before we continue, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like this deep dive, you could leave a super thanks. And if you really want to support the channel, we've got limited edition coffee mugs like this right here. We've got t-shirts. So give all that a look. Link is in the description. All right, so I laid out a few reasons why I think they never got bigger. For one, like I said, they didn't do enough extensive touring. They should have really been hitting the road at that time. And then every album had 4 years or 5 years in between it. So you lose a ton of momentum due to that. I believe the reason we didn't see anything happen after the last album was because of the fact that I do know members are scattered throughout the country. I think a few of them are still in South Florida, but Chris, for example, I know lived in Connecticut, like, because I was living in Connecticut at the time, and I remember hitting him up and being like, we should hang out, and I never got a chance to, and I haven't seen him at shows in a while, but I would see him every now and again at shows in the New York City area. So yeah, you can't really rehearse with those guys in South Florida. If he's out there, there's probably other members, and I think this band was their life 20 years ago, and a lot of things changed within the span of 20 years, and I think that's just why they had to call it quits after the final album. Then there's another factor, the image. I think that's a huge factor because the image helped them in some ways. It blew them up, as I said, with the Vampire Freaks crowd. However, for a lot of people visually, you're like run-of-the-mill rock fan, they would look at them and go, this is like a Hot Topic band. I mean, it was a very over-the-top image, and if that didn't appeal to you, it's very likely, just based on the visuals alone, you wouldn't give the music a listen. And there's a ton of bands out there with these over-the-top visuals where the music doesn't do it for me. Deadstar Assembly were a killer band. Whether they looked like just guys who were in a rock band or they had that particular image, I would have been into them. But there's always those people who just aren't going to give them a chance based on that. And I think their music could have had a much more widespread appeal than just goth kids, because it's great music. It's great structurally, like really catchy hooks, really great guitar playing, especially great drumming in the last two albums. And yeah, more people should have given them a chance. I don't expect this video to get a ton of love or anything or be one of my biggest performing videos because, once again, Deadstar Assembly was never that big, but I just wanted to do this video out of my own interest because I think they're an absolutely killer band. And if any of you are just coming across this video, I would say go check them out now. Any of the albums, they're all really great. I mean, as I said, my favorite is the album 2 albums ago, which is Coat of Arms. I think that start to finish is a great album, but really, if you pick up any of them, it's just awesome, awesome stuff. So with that, if you want to binge watch any more of our content, we do deep dives, we do rock news and commentary, and you can check out one of those deep dives by clicking here.